So Chuck, thank you for doing
Thank
this.
you so much for doing this.
Good to see you finally in person.
Nice to see you guys. Welcome south.
Thank you
you.
very much.
I hope you don't have any trouble getting back over the border.
How do you like our digs?
Well done. I mean, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning, or almost the beginning. How you got into this crazy, business of covering American politics?
Well, I was sort of into politics my father was a political junkie. I had a family member that worked in campaigns that stayed with us one summer when I was in high school. So I got caught the bug, and I was like, all right, I want to go to school in DC. So I applied for university. I applied for college, basically in and around DC. Ended up going to GW, and because I wanted to be here. I didn't know if I wanted to work in politics or, and I got an early internship my sophomore year in college with something called The Hotline. Which back then, this is in the early 90s, it was a digital publication before anybody knew that was going to be a thing.
Right.
In fact, we were so early, we didn't end up making a fortune off of it, right? The way you would think an early adopter would.
Yeah.
Right? Somehow other people made more money off of making newsletters down in the road. But essentially, and the 92 campaign was my first campaign to cover professionally. And
who was that?
That was Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, and Ross Perot.
Ross Perot.
At the time, it was the craziest election we'd experienced in 50 years.
Right.
It was just the beginning. I was telling people, wow. I mean, everything I got to, the Ross Perot was the best showing for a third party candidate we've ever had in this country.
Yeah. 2
years later, Republicans win control of Congress for the first time in 40 years. 3 years later, we have our first impeachment in over 100 years. Then there's, it just goes on. And in between we had O.J. Simpson and all that stuff. Then you had the 2000 election, which was our closest election that we'd ever dealt with in the modern era. Then there's 9/11. I mean, it has been one of those things. I do think there's something to this, that since the fall of the Berlin Wall, American politics has gone crazy in that. And it's the end of the Cold War. The Cold War, I think, created stability around the globe. Right. In a weird way, even though we were on edge, you had the democracy side and you had the Soviet side.
It was clear.
And it was clear. And even in this country, the two parties, they agreed that the Soviets were a problem. They may disagree on how to deal with it, but they kept their fringe bases out of governing. Berlin Wall falls. A guy named Pat Buchanan challenges George H.W. Bush for president. Pat Buchanan is essentially the first Donald Trump. And it's the first time you see that wing of the party start to percolate. And of course, here we are. But we've been in this very tumultuous, in some ways, for your guys, probably your whole adult lifetime.
Yeah.
But this has been essentially nonstop since the fall of the Berlin Wall.
So that, you think, was the inflection point then, eh?
Well, I think it's one of those things that I'm toying, I go back and forth, and I think political historians are going to be debating this, which is, it's possible the Cold War was an outlier and that our natural state is polarized. Because if you look at American politics before World War II, you look at American politics in the 19th century, it all looks a lot like we look now. Pretty evenly divided, pretty hostile. It's fascinating that actually the Cold War, which is what I grew up in some ways with, might be the outlier. And if you were to look at American politics in these political eras as a data set, you might throw that one out and just say, this is our normal, which is partisan media at each other's throat. I'll give you a data way to look at it. This century, all 7 of our presidential elections this century have been decided by 6 points or less. In the entire 20th century, we had 5. But in the 19th century, we had all sorts of close elections. We had multiple cycles of one-term presidents. We never had back-to-back one-term presidents in the entire 20th century. We've already done it 3 times this century, and we did it a ton in the 19th century. So I think there's something to the fact that it's possible that unless there's an existential threat, we're kind of at each other's throats.
I don't know. That feels a little.
Is that too dark for you?
It feels a little pessimistic to me.
I think that's an optimist. My point is, I would say it's weirdly. I get that it sounds dark, but I talk about it because we get through. We have these periods, and we get through it. And now the question is, are we going to get through it without a depression? Are we going to get through it without a war? That's, I think.
Well, we get through it, but it's every period is different than the next. And this period is marked by, like, we're sitting here on a podcast, right? So people they don't really tune into, where we came from, mainstream media as much anymore. They don't, have that sort of local.
Certainly generational now.
Yeah,
it's only really older folks.
They don't have that local journalism, which I think, brought people together, right? It gave people a sense of like, this is what we care about as a community.
Boy, I completely agree. I think in our country, as I say, a man named Craig decided classifieds ought to be free, yada, yada, yada. It destroyed local journalism. And I say that because that was the revenue stream that allowed local journalism to succeed. And when you got rid of that, and by the way, if there had been Craigslist, somebody else would have come up with something.
Yeah.
But that's been the problem, and we've not figured out how to recreate local news, because I completely agree. In fact, I think one of the more interesting companies trying to reanimate local news is in Canada. It's a company called Village Media, and they're micro-local.
Okay.
I'd love to see that sort of, if we could see that replicated in the United States, because I think that's a huge problem. I totally agree with you.
I mean, the national news as well was kind of this unifying force that brought folks together. But I wonder,
more in the sense of like, this is evidence-based reporting that everyone can agree that this is a set of facts that we agree to.
Well, you know why
right?
people trusted local news?
Because they got to know who.
It's simpler than that. They go every day. They got to fact check it by going outside.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My point is that and local news helps you live your life.
Yeah.
National news is a little more civics oriented, a little more
macro context.
Right.
Yeah.
But what's the journalism that you come to rely on is actually the journalism that helps you live your life. And that's how you earn trust. It's local journalism that earns trust. National journalism only gets trust if our local journalists give us good character references.
Right.
Well, you spent a good part of your career in national journalism, in one of the hottest seats that you can have in Washington, D.C. Tell us a bit about that and that experience.
Well, no, I mean, I called Meet the Pro. I was a musician in college. It's sort of what paid for school, and I played the French horn. And
I played the French horn too.
Yeah, there you go.
It was horrible.
That's strange that you guys have that in common.
I wasn't bad. I was good enough to get a scholarship.
There you go.
So,
okay. Well, you're better than me then.
And, you want to be first chair.
Yeah.
Right. So Meet the Press was first chair.
Yeah.
So that was there's no doubt about it. Right. This was a moment. And I got lucky. And then I think I got the last ride,
Yeah.
because it all of this stuff is shrinking in relevance to people's lives. And because of in some ways, the very normal pattern of how technology changes media habits. It's actually a cycle of it. We see it all the time, which is because 100 years ago, we wouldn't have been sitting around in a podcast. We'd be reading magazines, right? But every time a new technology comes along, we fragment, then we consolidate, then a new technology comes along, we fragment, we consolidate, and on and on. But look, I had basically the last term of Obama and the first term of Trump, and it was it's certainly it's one of those that I think I'm almost going to need more distance to truly be able to absorb that transition.
Do you miss it at all, or do you enjoy having your Sundays?
So I definitely enjoy having my Sundays. What I miss is my colleagues.
Yeah.
I miss our morning meetings where we, carved up the day and figured out, well, let's pursue this. At the end of the day, if I could do anything, it's run a newsroom. Again, I enjoy running a newsroom.
Would you run a local one?
I'd run I like running a newsroom in general. I'd run local. I've got if I put together this company I'm hoping to put together, I have a blueprint of basically become almost like the pilot that, we start, all right, we'll start a newsroom here. Okay, I'll move on to start one here, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But that's always the most exciting part. And that's the stuff I miss. I miss an occasional Sunday interview, but I don't miss there's a lot I don't miss. I'll just leave it at that.
So you're talking about running a newsroom. Maybe we can just get your thoughts on, CBS and, I guess not when we were in newsrooms.
Yes. I wasn't
You-
there. I was there not too long ago.
Well, I guess I was out a little longer than you, but like you don't know what how your news director leans, right? Like you don't know that they're like if they're conservative or they're liberal or they're progressive, and and same with the reporters and the journalists,
Or
right?
you shouldn't know which way your news director.
Maybe,
Mhm.
but that's kind of changing, right?
I guess. I mean, I would say that we've, I don't know, the thing about what's happening with Barry Weiss at CBS is I am surprised she gave up her independence, regardless of, because you're running a newsroom that is a shrinking newsroom. Like I wouldn't want to be at a legacy TV network right now because they're not a growing place. They're shrinking.
Well, they're not growing on conventional media platforms.
I don't think they're growing anywhere.
You don't think they're growing on like YouTube and online and streaming? No?
Or
there's potential to grow there.
There certainly is, but I don't get the sense that these corporate parents want that. They want smaller. They want smaller footprints. You just see there's more cuts at my old
I saw that
hunting grounds today. We've seen a ton at ABC. You've seen a ton at CBS. I think, though, we're in a moment where having the word independent is a halo. And I think being a part of a corporate enterprise only brings on more skepticism.
Why do you think she's doing it?
Well, she had 155 million reasons to do it. I mean,
Right.
God bless her. Right. And, if she had invested, it's a lot of money. It's hard to, I'm not going to sit here and judge her for turning that down. I think she's going to regret giving up her independence. And if you tell me in 3 years she's back trying to, it wouldn't surprise me. Only, look, anytime you bring in somebody that has a print background into television, that's always a tough merge. I've been there.
Yeah.
I had a tough time going from print, and it was more of a digital side to transitioning in the world of television. There can be a culture clash if you're not careful. But to me, that isn't the issue. The issue is she gave up her independence. The reason she left the Times, the Free Press, is independently owned, and now you're part of this corporate entity that has capitulated to the president, right? So you've hurt if you look at trust in media, a lot of mainstream media had already lost trust from conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of these capitulations, the numbers are still going down. Why? Because now they're losing trust among independents and liberals.
So I remember calling you, I think when I was going through my transition to going to independent.
Yeah.
I called you, I called Ali Velshi, a couple folks that I knew down here, just to get kind of, the pulse on what you think. And you told me the exact thing, go independent.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the moment right now for independent creators? And also, to your point of local journalism, how do we get back there, or can we ever get back to that point if everything is now independent?
So I think you can. And I think, look, I'm not saying it's going to be independent forever.
Yeah.
So I'm a believer that history rhymes. And so if you look back at the most similar period we're going through, which is about 100 years ago. 100 years ago, we're transitioning from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy. You have the rise of the robber barons. Well, what's happening now? We have the rise of the oligarchs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you had this in the late 19th century, early 20th century, very partisan media. Every community in this country had a newspaper in their community that was tied to a political party. In fact, you'd see the party names were in the paper. So, and then what happened was you had this corporate consolidation with government, fusing itself with government, and the beginnings of independent journalism. They were called the muckrakers. Mm-hmm. And in fact, that's where the term comes from. And it's Teddy Roosevelt decided to become their champion and obviously went after trust busting, and the rest is history. But the seeds of the accountability media that we all sort of miss, I can tell in our conversation here, were planted back then. And that was the beginning of trying to departisanize press. Media was in that early 20s. So I think we're going through a period. I think we're in the middle of rebuilding a new mainstream media. And I think being independent, as I joke, I want to be a consolidator, but if I get consolidated, that's okay too. And I think that's the way you should look at it. You may end up becoming part of a bigger enterprise, but it's likely to be an independent enterprise that's a larger entity. And I think right now the distrust in corporations and in anything consolidated power gives independent media almost a leg up with credibility with the public.
So I want to pick up on what you said there about, rebuilding the mainstream media. What is that? What does that even look like?
But we do it all the time. I'll give you an example. So in Life magazine used to be the mainstream media.
Right.
Life magazine, and then we got moving pictures, right? Meaning that
okay, you're going back.
Right. But my point is that we cycle in and out of it. There was a time news radio was mainstream media.
Yep.
And then, of course, we got the Walkman and we decided to curate our own music and people stopped listening to the radio. So I think that we that some of these YouTube channels, some of these YouTube networks, podcast networks, in 10 years, you'll be like, oh yeah, they're the Ringer Network. Yeah, they're a major independent media brand, and they're, or the Independent Media Alliance includes 20 different influencers from politics and sport, whatever something. So I think that's what I mean, that we're in the middle of building.
But do you think that the heads of these networks, former heads of these networks, have any they bear any of the blame for where media has gone when it comes to distrust? Because I think that there is, even in Canada, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's a certain level of distrust amongst, primarily conservatives.
Right.
But a lot of the public right now distrust the mainstream media. And you have to wonder whether or not that is because the media executives aren't being self-reflective and taking those concerns seriously.
I have two theories on that. Well, one is, we never focused enough in this country on geographic diversity in the newsroom.
Right.
Because if you get geographic diversity, you're going to get socioeconomic diversity and you're going to get ideological diversity. Mm-hmm. We spent too much time having things look diverse on air, but everybody went to Harvard. I didn't, but you get my point.
A Laurentian elite in Canada is what we call it.
Right. Where, it may look like
yes,
this,
exactly.
A Benetton commercial, but everybody got the same, everybody took the same class and everybody has the same, thinks the same way. Yeah. So I do think there's something that, but I think the bigger issue has been that is social media. And I think we can't. I mean, social media destroyed the trust in the information ecosystem. This is the world we live in. And in fact, it's about to destroy all trust. I mean, I think the last 3 weeks, the launch of Sora, and the ability to create AI video with such ease. I've got middle-aged 53-year-old eyes now, and I'll go on social media and someone will say, hey, this is obvious AI slop. And I'm like staring at it. It is? What am I missing? Like, I don't see it. And so I'm like, oh no, if I can't. Right. Well, hopefully, but they're not always going to have four fingers, and they're not always going to have two knees.
Right.
And this stuff, and this is 1.0 of this stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
It's all. So what's really going to happen is nobody's going to trust anything that they see on social media. Mm-hmm. But I do think social media made a huge blame here, and the algorithms, because the algorithms don't look at our incentive structure. We don't control our distribution. Mm-hmm. Even now, as independent media, you're basically on 2 or 3 platforms. You better hope YouTube, Google doesn't decide to just turn the algorithm off, right? Or Spotify or Apple. So we're a little bit at the mercy of these algorithms to get attention. And of course, what does that do? We find out the algorithms reward partisanship. They don't necessarily reward moderation and nuance.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Is that our fault, or is that the fault of the tech companies that have sort of put us in this situation?
Right.
Yeah. So I think also that when journalists like you or like Travis or other people leave mainstream media, they bring along with them their audience, they bring along with them their credibility, they bring along with them that trust, right? So that's sort of like a new ecosystem too.
It is.
So I think
the influencer model is actually going to only grow.
Right.
I do.
I just want to take you back to how you left your last job. Mm-hmm. And was there sort of like a moment or like in your mind where you're like, yeah, it's time for me to go, or this is it for me? Or
well, it was like, look, I wasn't ready to do a rerun campaign at Meet the Press.
Right.
And this was a rerun, right? Mm-hmm. In that sense, it looked like Biden. Sure. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So there was that part of it. But what was really distressing was I was actually pretty excited about the streaming stuff and building more programming for that. And they didn't want to do it. Everybody wanted, everything. So look, I'd been pretty lucky. I've had 2 employers for my 35, 40 years, 30, what am I up to? 30 years, 30 plus years in this. And for 29 of those 30 years, I worked for a company that was always growing. They may have downsized over here, but they did that to invest in something over here. This was the first time that I was at a place that wasn't, they were only downsizing, and they're not alone.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit entrepreneurial, and there was just, once you've done Meet the Press at NBC, there's not.
Yeah.
Today's Show is not my cup of tea, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I wasn't going to be a morning show guy. I didn't want to get up. I already hated getting up at 3:30. I don't want to get up at 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And so the exciting part of this is that you feel like there's new stuff happening. There's potential here. There's growth, and maybe you can have an impact. For me, the impact I want to have is on local.
Mm-hmm. So what are you doing now besides?
So right.
Podcast?
I've got, look, I've planted my public facing flag, doing a podcast, doing the video.
Yeah.
I've got this, an additional Sunday night show that I do on a platform called Newsphere,
right?
An OOsphere. That's a Substack. I'm an investor in it. That's code for I'm not getting paid for it.
Eventually.
You never know, right? But it's a Substack alternative. So the idea is it's independent journalists sharing one subscription versus the Substack model, which is direct. So it's just a different model. It's a little more video front facing than that. And then I'm working on this larger local news project to try to, can we scale local news?
Once you launch that, we'll be interested to talk to you again about it, because you're being very cryptic about
it. Well, I part of it is I'm trying to raise money.
Right.
I mean, that's the reality. My thesis is that the best way to reanimate local news in America is to start actually with youth sports and high school sports. Because that's actually, when you talk about community, Red America, Blue America, we all love our kids and we all want to see our kids play ball. And the Caitlin Clark effect has really created a surge of young girls in youth sports now. So you really have this incredible, growing group of, and to be perfectly, sort of capitalistic about it, the parents of these young kids are all millennials, and they're it's what advertisers want. And to me, it's the best way to build out trust. You become the home of how to watch your kids play ball. That's a great way to build trust. Then you help them micro forecasting of weather and get an influencer to help them save money at the grocery store and food. And then suddenly they're believing you when you tell them that the city councilman's corrupt, right? That this is a tentpole. But look, like I said, one of the models that I've spent some time with the founder of Village Media. Village Media that's outside of Ontario is a model that I'm hoping that we can figure out how to replicate.
Where are they based?
Based in Ontario.
They're based in Ontario.
Yeah. Okay. Village Media. It's interesting. They've been having.
So
they've been doing a lot of trying to redoing what we're all talking about, reanimating community news. That's a little less polarizing.
This is what happens when you get 2 former journalists and 1 current journalist in the room. We talk about news.
I think we're recovering journalists.
We're definitely all recovering journalists. We want to talk to you about some issues, though, since this podcast is based usually in Canada. What do you think about Canada-U.S. relations right now in this Trump-Carney? Is it a bromance? It's not a bromance. I think
it's close.
It's a recalibration of the relationship, because we just had Laura Trump in here, and she was saying that he wasn't a big fan of Trudeau.
Well, look, Trudeau, it was personal, right?
Yeah.
And
why?
Well, Trudeau dunked on. Trudeau made himself an American celebrity by dunking on Trump. Yeah. I mean, if I were sitting in Trump's shoes, Trudeau's sort of, he grabbed the moment, and it was good politics for him. Mm-hmm. And suddenly it was good. He thought it was good politics for him here in America. Yeah. And he sort of leaned into it.
Carney's not doing that.
Carney's not doing that at all.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's like Carney's getting the same bump that Trudeau got early, because Canadians are just angry at America and the Trump administration over these tariffs. But Carney didn't have to. He's behaving. He strikes me more as a technocrat, and I say that as a compliment, not as that somebody who's not there to be a celebrity politician. Look, there was always something to Trudeau that had a little bit of, the good looks,
We heard the latest news.
The son of a former prime minister. No. Tell me the gossip.
You don't know.
He's dating somebody. That's right. Who did I?
Come
hear?
on, you don't know the latest.
I forget who it is.
Karman.
Well, very racy pictures of him on top of a yacht with Katy Perry.
It's Katy Perry. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's pretty impressive, Katy Perry.
So that kind of speaks to what you're talking about.
Trump. Anybody that in Trump's mind sort of is able to sort of dunk on him, right? There's that. But let's be honest. Las Vegas and Orlando are really hurting from the lack of Canadian tourists.
Yeah.
And this has been a much bigger economic hit. To both Florida and Nevada, to the two places that, put it this way, Las Vegas didn't realize how many Canadians gambled in Las Vegas. It has been a huge hit there, and it's been a pretty big hit in Florida as well. And I think things are slightly better because Carney has figured out how to manage him. But I've been impressed with how much Carney has tried to diversify. Yeah. It's like this was a moment that Canada now has to do what the Europeans are doing, which is, hey, we can't assume the Americans are always going to be there. So we better have, build. I mean, I think about all of the ways that, frankly, our government bullied the Canadian government in not doing business with Huawei and any of those Chinese tech companies. And I'm sure a lot of Canadians are going, wait a minute, you asked us not to do this. We agreed. And now this is the situation we're in right now. So I think long term we've really hurt ourselves by suddenly Canada by Canada deciding, hey, we don't want to have to rely on the United States. And now all of a sudden we've got an independent actor to our north that we're going to wish wasn't so independent at some point in the future.
Since we're in DC, we thought we'd ask you about the government shutdown and like what does it really mean for people? How does it compare to maybe the shutdown we had in a couple years past?
Well, first of all, you're gonna get a quick 30-second rant from me. The idea that there is nothing in the Constitution that says the government must cease operations if there is a funding dispute in the legislative branch. It does not exist anywhere in the Constitution. This is a choice. When I say it's a choice, meaning all the leaders have decided, well, the Justice Department says we've not ever had a court ruling on this. There's never been a challenge. Why we stop funding it is asinine. I apologize for using that Canadian French there, but it is absolutely asinine.
Not even close.
It is ridiculous. Okay, so can you imagine a company? If the CEO and the CFO were having a dispute, we're just going to cease operation. McDonald's isn't going to make any hamburgers for 2 weeks. How would that go for business? Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, the other thing we've done is we've made government shutdowns easy because Social Security checks still go out. They always figure out how to pay the military, just like they've done this time. So there isn't this, and planes keep going, food keeps getting inspected. We've created this situation where all these government workers are expected to work and know you'll eventually get paid, which good luck telling the electric company that, hey, you're eventually going to get paid when I eventually get paid. That usually doesn't work out very well, right? And so we've made it, frankly, politically too easy to do this. And there's a little bit of a Chicken Little mindset. It feels like we're always on the verge of shutting down. So there isn't the same sense of urgency to it. So the public doesn't get worked up. That said, it's horrendous for the actual government workers.
Right.
They don't know.
Yeah.
It is true they'll get paid. They just don't know when. And all of a sudden, you want to talk about you mess up people's credit ratings? There's all sorts of after-on effects. The last shutdown finally came to an end when we had air traffic controllers calling in sick. Where it's like, the only way the government is going to open up is when when basically planes are grounded at National Airport here in Washington, D.C. And
Yikes.
once planes are grounded because of not enough air traffic controllers go around, I promise you, all of a sudden, everybody will do this. Look, I think that it's really awkward because this is the first shutdown where the Democrats are behaving like the Republicans and the Republicans are behaving. So it had almost every other shutdown has been driven by the right.
Right.
This is the first time that it's been driven by the left. And the thing that the right is asking for is always the same thing that the left is. We've got a clean, continuing resolution, and then we'll keep negotiating. So I do think Democrats don't have the high ground here. They do have an issue that is of concern to the public, which is healthcare. But the longer this goes on, the less political upside there is for the Democrats.
I want to ask you about this issue at the Pentagon right now. I said we were going to leave journalism, but we're kind of back in that sphere. What do you make of it, and where do you see that going? You know, when you hear like Martha Raddatz has turned over her
right. Well, everybody has.
Yeah.
Everybody except one sort of fringy network, OAN,
Yeah.
that isn't really a serious journalistic enterprise. Everybody, Newsmax, Fox News, right? Those, because this is a blatant violation of the First Amendment. It should be easily sort of, I think if they sue over this, they will win. Our Constitution is crystal clear about government impeding the free press. And that's what this is. This is the government impeding the free press. So look,
you worry about the precedent?
Of course.
And do you think that we could see that at the White House potentially?
We already have seen it at the White House. They've done it in their own way, right? They kept the Associated Press out of the pool. They've added all these sort of influencer type that are more supporters more than they are.
I saw Sean Spicer was asking questions.
Right. I mean, like Spicer's
he's coming on the show at some point.
He's a former staffer, right? Like, you know. And look, he's going to say, well, what about George Stephanopoulos?
Yes.
Which is a totally, to me, very fair retort on that front. But the question is, do you use journalistic standards, right? And I actually think in some ways, because everybody acted in concert, this won't be a successful precedent.
Okay.
I'm really, you know how sometimes you're like, you're like relieved. They're like, oh, everybody stood on their principle on this one. Thank God. So I'm, look, unfortunately, there's a children's book called If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. I don't know if you guys know that children's book. Have you ever?
Karman's the one with kids.
Yeah. You have not?
I don't think so.
It's terrific.
Okay, great.
And it's all about, if you give a mouse a cookie, every day the mouse is going to come back and want another cookie. Right. So don't give the mouse a cookie. We gave, and it wasn't just any mouse that gave him a cookie. It was the mouse that gave the cookie, right? Meaning Disney settles that lawsuit over George Stephanopoulos, which was a baseless lawsuit. But the minute ABC did that, they were the first ones to capitulate. Then it gave all of the Trump administration thinking we can make them all kowtow. Yeah. And quite a few have. And this is a moment that at least everybody said, not now. No. Yeah. We finally put a halt to it somewhere.
What was your relationship like with the Trump administration? Because
it was always, I always said this, like, Donald Trump always wanted to woo me.
Really?
Always. We had a very...
On Twitter?
You know what he would say? He would say this. He would say, oh, my attacks, it's good for your ratings. He views it. He views the press. Look, he's a creature of wrestling. I don't think people fully appreciate this. But, the sort of professional wrestling, right? The staged fights with the media people and the wrestlers. Well, when Trump was in his heyday in Atlantic City, the only, when the WW, back then it was called the WWF, now it's the WWE. Madison Square Garden, the big venues wouldn't do wrestling. They thought it was beneath them. Trump was like, I'll take it. And so he got real. This is why he has such a close relationship. And, he had fun with it. It was a reality show. But he viewed the way there was a guy named Mean Gene Okerlund who was the press guy, and it was always the wrestlers would always
the
attack
ball
them.
guy,
right?
Yeah,
the wrestlers would always,
yeah.
and it was always this stagecraft.
Yeah,
that's what Trump thinks. This is all it's all an act. So he would sit there and say, oh, "This is good for your ratings." He'd call and all.
Was he right though?
What's that?
Was he right?
So not really.
No.
I mean, early on, everything Trump touched, people were curious.
Yeah.
He does not increase ratings anymore.
Really?
In general, because we're in the Gary Busey stage of Celebrity Apprentice, right? Like, I mean, I think there is such a numbness, right? Because in some ways there's a sameness about Trump.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I always joke about all the Trump books, right, that come out. And there's always they all actually are the same story. It'll be a different setting. It'll be a different scene, but it's always the same story. You won't believe what he wanted to do, and you won't believe who stopped him. And that's really the essence of every Trump scoop that we've had over the last 10 years. Like, oh my God, he wanted to do what? And then it was and wait a minute, who actually kept him from doing it? Wow. Right?
Yeah.
And the point is that we're kind of in this. There is a sameness to this that is that I think the public is sort of. By the way, his approval rating this term is the exact same one as it was in the last term.
Don't tell him that.
I mean, it is the exact same thing. The only difference this time is the Republican Party isn't fighting him.
Mm-hmm.
In the first term, his own party was fighting him.
That's right.
In this term, they've all surrendered.
So with the Democrats, do you see anyone that is a breakout star that could lead this party?
I don't. I think if you look at the history of the Democratic Party, there are 3 of the last 4 Democratic presidents that have been elected.
Yeah.
So I'm going to set Biden aside. Biden was sort of an accident.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. At this point in time, 3 years before their successful presidential election, not a single person was ever mentioning their name for president. The Democrats are more likely to look for somebody that, take Pete Buttigieg.
Mm-hmm.
In 2017, the same period we're in right now, 3 years before the 2020 election, nobody said the mayor of South Bend, Indiana was going to be a serious candidate for president. Mm-hmm. But voters did, because voters were looking for somebody new. Do I think Gavin Newsom is having a moment? I do. Is AOC going to be a player in this? Yes. I think there's somebody that none of us are talking about right now, because that will end up getting tracked. It could be this oyster farmer in Maine. It could be the pastor in Texas. Mm-hmm. It could be somebody we're not even talking about, that it could be some tech leader that decides I'm gonna run for president in sort of a Ross Perot style. So I think the likelihood that the Democrats, that the candidate that gets traction is somebody, again, Jimmy Carter came from nowhere. Bill Clinton was really the Arkansas governor. Barack Obama was seen as, wait your turn. This is Hillary Clinton's time this time, right? So, the players that get mentioned, none of them look like they're future presidents to me. I will say this. But the party needs to have its own fight, right?
Yeah.
The Republicans had a fight, and we all thought it was actually going to be bad for the Republicans, but you could argue it was actually healthy, right? They had this huge fight between essentially the Bush wing and this populist Trump wing. The Trump wing won, and they've done better. This is the best showing for the Republican Party in controlling the House, the Senate, and the presidency. They almost won a majority of the popular vote. That's only happened one other time this century, with George W. Bush in 2004. So it is a party. It's more successful than Mitt Romney-led party, the more successful than the John McCain-led party. We're going to have a fight between the progressives and, I guess I call them the pragmatists, right? Mm-hmm. And I do think the only way the pragmatists win is if it's somebody new, right? It can't be names that we've talked about before. And so that I keep my eye as closely on the pastor from Texas, Tallarico,
right,
and some of these other people as I do Gavin Newsom. Now, Gavin's having a moment, right? He's seen as he's fighting. He's taking the fight to them. I question whether
it's also pulling a page from Trump's book.
Correct. Yeah. And I also question whether a former mayor of San Francisco can win a national election.
Yeah.
It's, it's been tough for somebody to do.
We're looking at the time. We have to catch a flight, but
All
I
right.
want to go to our rapid fire uncensored. It's called our uncensored rapid fire.
Yes, I'm
round.
rooting for the Blue Jays.
Oh,
Are you
good.
really?
I am because I want I want to see a Blue
We'll
Jays
see.
Dodgers.
This is airing in a couple weeks.
I have
so we'll
enough
see if
Canadian.
that works.
I have
It's
enough
exciting.
Canadian friends who are, Major League Baseball's not rooting for Toronto, but
There you go. So, okay, we're going to go really rapid on
Okay.
this one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The toughest guest you've ever had on Meet the Press.
toughest guest. Hardest interview, I will say, is actually comedians. It's Al Franken. Because you never know when a comedian is being, especially a comedian turned politician.
Yeah.
Are you trying to be funny or are you being serious? I find interviewing comedians harder than regular old politicians.
Okay.
And
Did it go sideways at all or no?
Yes.
It did.
Every Franken interview I've ever had goes
Okay.
because I never know when he's being witty or not. And of course, what's the other lesson when you interview a comedian? Don't try to be funny.
Right.
They're the comedian.
Okay.
I find it really hard.
One political figure you'd still love to sit down with and interview today at length.
Oh, I love talking with Donald Trump.
Really?
Sure. The
Does
problem
he like
is
talking to you?
Yeah.
Really?
always
I think
has.
that would surprise a lot of people.
I don't know why it does. He loves the press. He wants to be loved by the press.
Have you talked to him since
He's
you left
constantly
office? Since you
no,
left
but he
office,
was
since
really
you left
happy.
Your position.
It's so funny. He caught something I said, we haven't had a president who's been this impactful on our culture since FDR.
Right.
That's a factual statement. He took it. Thank you for comparing me to FDR. He took it as this great compliment. And he was like, I knew you were so smart, Chuck. And it's typical, as he is. But the other person, I'll tell you an interview that I've always, somebody I've never interviewed, and just because of the way, but I would want to in almost a 2-hour setting is Bill Clinton.
Really? You've never? That surprised me that you've.
I
never,
know. Well, he wasn't as relevant when our paths crossed. Obviously, I interviewed Hillary Clinton a number of times, but he was sort of semi-retired, So yeah, just never have.
All right.
Who's the best communicator of this generation?
I guess you have to say it's Donald Trump.
He's your answer for a lot of things today.
I would have said,
This is going to surprise a lot of people.
well, he's figured out how to communicate in this fragmented environment.
Yeah.
Who else has?
And punch through.
Right.
Yeah.
So if the question is effective communicator, he's effective. Look, Barack Obama sort of was, I do think Barack Obama figured out how to do something that another Democrat, if they can figure it out, will be the next leader, which is how to make progressives think you're a revolutionary and how to make moderates think you're a pragmatist. That was also a pretty good and effective. He's the best communicator the Democrats have had in the 21st century, but you got to say that Trump's been the more effective communicator of anybody.
One word to describe journalism right now.
Challenged.
All right. Last one. What's the favorite thing that you do on your Sundays now that you were not able to do before?
Watch football.
There you go.
I watch a lot. No, it's not Sundays. It's actually Saturdays.
Right.
What I get to do is travel on a Saturday. I get to go out to dinner on a Saturday.
Yes.
I had for 20 years, I was the guy that I don't go out on weekends. I get to do weird things like go to a college football game, which take place on Saturdays. Believe it or not, it's my Saturdays that I'm so happy to have back. Sunday was show day. That was done in the morning, and then of course you still had your Sunday. That my weekend. I used to joke my weekend began at noon on Sundays.
Yeah.
So
I got to tell people before we go, I called you yesterday and I said, we're going to be in DC today. Yeah. And you agreed to do this interview. That is,
that either says
I'm very, very,
or
thing
am I that desperate to be on?
No,
listen,
we
you're
really
a great guy. We appreciate it. Chuck
Thank
Todd.
you so much.
Thanks.
You guys are great. I love this. Can't be censored.
There you go.
Why'd you come up with that name?
Because we wanted people to cuss. You haven't cussed.
I did. I said asinine.
That's not it.
I did say asinine.
Okay, we'll let you have a pass.
Well, but the whole cursing thing, because Democrats, just cursing isn't going to help you connect with everyday people.
No, of course not.
Right? But do speak, as I always say, do speak American.
Right.
I know. Okay. Yeah. I know you guys don't know what that's a boot. So
A boot.
there you go. I
Thank
gave
you
you one
so
Thanks,
boot.
Chuck.
Bye, guys.
Appreciate it.